So I am delighted to announce our speakers. First of all, Matt Wheeldon, who's Director of Infrastructure Development for Wessex Water. And secondly, my colleague Adrien Baudrimont, who's Senior Research Manager at CIRIA. And between them, they're going to tackle the why, the how and the what, I suppose, of rainwater management and advocate for changing our relationship with rain. Matt, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. I feel a bit of a fraud in that I think what I'm about to explain to you over the next 20 minutes is pure common sense. And you're just going to be nodding furiously at me, and I'm just kind of preaching to the choir. So forgive me. But it's a really important message because I know that all of you as professionals will be thinking along these lines in your heads. And what I want to try and do is join the dots, not necessarily the black ink dots, but the blue raindrops together, such that we have a common narrative about the direction of travel that we as a society really need to go, because the current direction of travel, quite frankly, is absurd. So, why we need to manage rain better where it lands, and I'm going to keep coming back to those 6 words, manage rain better where it lands, because that is one of the key takeaways. 6 simple words that we need to start repeating, and then how we go about doing it. And I'm going to cover the how quite broadly, and then we're going to narrow right down at the end to the rainwater management platform, and Adrien's going to lead us through that. So it doesn't take me to tell you, because I know you all know, because you're probably data science evidence-based people, that our climate is changing. It is getting warmer, and it is getting wetter. The two are linked. It's called the Clausius-Clapeyron relationship. And it says, and it's the law of thermodynamics, it says for every 1 degree the atmosphere warms, it can hold 6 to 7% more moisture. And then if we look back, we see that between 1960 and 1990, and 1990 and 2020, we see that the average air temperature in the UK has risen by 0.8 degrees centigrade, and the average amount of rainfall has increased 7.3%. Well, what do you know? The law works. Our summers are getting hotter. We have just had the hottest summer on record, not by a fraction, not by a small margin, but by a huge amount. And when I say huge amount, I mean 0.3 degrees. Doesn't sound like a lot, that is a lot. As our air temperature increases, our rainfall increases. And not only that, but the extremes increase. So we're going to get warmer, wetter winters, we're going to get longer, drier summers, interspersed with even heavier thunderstorms. So we've got to have this in the back of our mind, because this is really, really important. And we love building impermeable areas. We love a bit of impermeability. So this is how many additional homes we've built in the past. And at the top is where we need to be according to government targets. We do love a bit of impermeability. So the question is, how do we cope with this on the back of the previous slide? Well, we have a problem in the way in which we solve this problem. See, our problem is here. This is where rain lands, on our roofs, on our properties, as well as, of course, everywhere else. But because there is so much focus on solving the problems here, by building bigger reservoirs, by building bigger stormwater storage tanks, we have this obsession with store, treat, and move. So we store more, we treat more water, and we move the water to where we consume it in our homes. And then we add the rain, because that's how our infrastructure is built, and we move, store, and treat. And people forget this really, really, really simple fact. Water is heavy. And if you are a teenager of the 80s, you will remember Neil from The Young Ones. He understood.
Hole in my shoe.
The hole in my shoe is letting in water. So, I need a volunteer, someone who is strong. Will, you look strong.
I'm really strong.
Right. So, Will, that's 25 litres of water. Please, can you just lift it above your head? And down again. Right. Now, can you please do that 359 times? Don't worry. You sit down. Sit down. Each day, we, in the UK, use about 5.5 of these. Okay? Just out of interest, how much does that cost you for 25 litres? Anyone? How much is 25 litres of water from your tap?
Less than £5.
Less than £5? Okay, you're on the right side, yes.
50, 20, 25 pence.
5p.
7.5p. That's not what I'm here to talk about, but it's important because it's about value. Each day, on average, water companies will provide 5.5 of these to each of you, and to get it to your taps, we will do the equivalent of lifting that 359 times above our heads per person per day. That's how much energy goes into this really heavy stuff per person per day. The equivalent of Will lifting that above his head, the 2-metre lift, 359 times per person per day. It is heavy. Now, each day you use about 0 kilograms of electricity in weight, about 2 to 2.5 kilograms of gas in weight, but about 1/3 of a tonne of water services and sewerage and rainwater drainage services. Water is heavy, and shifting it around needlessly has a very, very high energy consumption and carbon footprint. Last year, domestic consumption of electricity in the UK was 94 terawatt hours rather, energy. The water companies consumed 7.2 terawatt hours of power, shifting this stuff along. And my point is, a lot of it doesn't need to be moved. We are needlessly shifting this heavy natural resource to our homes so that we can fill our toilet systems with high quality drinking water, such that 1/3 of our daily demand does not have to be drinking water quality. And enough rain, so that's for flushing toilets and watering the gardens, etc. And enough rain lands on every roof to supply that 1/3. But because we don't manage rain where it lands, our infrastructure is not designed for that. We don't do that as a society. We try and fix our water scarcity problems, and of course we're not out of the woods yet from this current summer. We try and fix them, and everyone focuses on, water companies build bigger reservoirs. That's the solution. It is, but it's a rubbish solution. In fact, the strategic resource options that we are looking at to build, which includes lots of reservoirs, will only address about 30% of the forecast supply-demand deficit of 5,000 megalitres a day by 2050. So we've got to find other ways of reducing consumption, and that is demand management, and that is why we need to value what lands on our roof. And then because every house built before the mid-1960s added the rain to the sewage, we have this wonderful problem that we all know of as storm overflows. Your sewage works treat, on average per year, 1.7 times the volume of liquid that our water treatment works produce. I'll just say that one again. So in other words, if you average out the rain and how much sewage works take and treat, we're treating 1.7 times the amount of water that we put into production each year. That 0.7 is a huge number, and again, it's pointless because it's unnecessary. And the consequence of shifting this heavy liquid around is our carbon footprint as water companies is going in the wrong direction. So whilst we try and fix storm overflows over here with big storage tanks and water scarcity with big reservoirs, our carbon footprint is going northwards. So everyone who's shouting about net zero, hello, we're not going that way. We're going in the wrong way. And storm overflows, the £56 billion we're about to spend over the next 25 years, mostly is going in the wrong place. Not all of it, but most of it. And the £50 billion we're about to spend on strategic resource options, again, the value of it when we're not managing the rain where it lands is actually much lower. So we've got to think more local. We are stuck in this vicious circle. We've got a rapidly changing climate. We're building more impermeable areas. We're focusing on decentralized solutions, reservoirs, storm tanks, which have an extreme embedded and operational carbon footprint, which, funnily enough, is contributing to climate change. We're stuck in a vicious circle. And the question is, how do we break this circle? And I tell you, I think this is the answer. No, it is a large part of the answer. It's not the total answer. I wouldn't be as bold to say that. But boy, if we did this better as a society, we would certainly break that cycle and that circle. There's no silver bullet to this. Sorry about that. It's not easy. But the good news is also, it is not rocket science. No, I said this was common sense. This is the level of Janet and John. So Janet and John were the authors of these books, well, fictionary authors. They wrote in the 1940s and 50s, and they explained to primary school children how things were done. And I think Janet and John would have written these two simple principles. That rain is a resource, we should capture it locally and reuse where possible, and then rain should be returned back to the environment as close to where it first landed. Now, I noticed susdrain have done this very clever thing of taking two words and taking two bits out of it, so I thought I'd do the same. And I've invented simples. Simples are simple principles. And our friend, was it Sir Guy is his name? I don't know. I'm not here advocating compare the market, by the way. It's just, you all heard of it. Simple principles that Janet and John could have written. They are actually embedded in a government document, the Storm Overflow Discharge Reduction Plan. They're in the part of that document that no one reads, along with changes to legislation that we need, which I'll come on to in a second. So, manage rain better where it lands, driven by two simple principles. And we all need to be advocates of this to make it land. So rather than solving the problem at the bottom, we need to fix it there. Now, here's the strange thing. We get it as a society when it comes to energy. So government realizes the need, and it expects it in the National Planning Policy Framework, that we will aim to decentralize or have renewable or low carbon energy supply systems. And the way it works, of course, sometimes it doesn't work, but there's this idea of tackling the problem of energy consumption where energy is being used. Yes, we're building big wind farms and all that kind of stuff and new nuclear power stations, I get that. But also there is the ability for us to tackle our own homes by telling developers how to build new correctly, but also the ability to retrofit by using a central government grant system whereby we're all paying for it. Your standing charge, by the way, on your electricity and gas bill is significant. For me, it's £1 a day. I don't know what it is for you guys, which then is made available for discounts on solar panels, ground source heat pumps, etc., etc. Wonderful. Because this natural resource landing on our roof is valuable, but this one is not valuable. The National Planning Policy Framework has an overarching environment objective to use natural resources prudently and then doesn't mention rain. How bizarre. How crazy, how daft. So there is no such function or organization or thinking that says rain is a societal issue. Enough of it is landing on every roof that we could use it if we were able to harness it and reuse it and then get rid of it locally. So there is no process for this at the moment. When we look at storm overflow solutions, and I said we're spending £56 billion over the next 25 years on addressing storm overflows, of course, storm overflows are not a poo problem at all. They're a rain problem. We can cope with as much poo as everyone can produce, but we can't cope with the amount of rain people are adding. And there are kind of 4 different types of solution. You can separate, you can attenuate, you can increase treatment capacity, or you can treat the intermittent discharge from the overflow. But when you compare these different solutions, and by the way, just to let you know, this is where most money is going, to attenuation then treatment. So we're going to attenuate the rain, we're going to pump the rain, we're going to treat the rain. Great idea? Not. But when you look at the relative benefits of these different types of solutions, stopping the problem at source stands above them all. Common sense, as I said. Source control, common sense. Because it opens the door to valuing the rain as a resource, water efficiency, as well as reducing people's bills because they're using less of our products and supplying less to us, as well as reducing embodied and operational carbon. So, we have a chance to build back better, to meet those 2 simple principles, those 2 simples, and actually harness the rain, capture it, reuse it, and then dispose of it locally. We have that chance. How do we do it? So very quickly, as I said, there's no silver bullet, but there are pillars to this change. We need to address where legislation does not incentivize, encourage, or enable it. We need to address regulation where it doesn't incentivize, encourage, or enable it. We need to tackle the economic incentives. I'll speak to that in a moment because it's hopeless. We need to educate people, and we need better technical guidance, which will be the nice segue. So Sir John Cunliffe and the Independent Water Commission, they kind of got it. They got it. This is their recommendation number 1. So the most important recommendation, number 1, the scope of the national, I put the word rain there, just because I'm talking about rain, the national water strategy should be sufficiently broad to overcome the siloed approaches historically seen in the water sector. Okay, I've crossed out the word sector and put cycle. Because this isn't just about the water sector, this is about the water cycle. Whenever I'm debating, and I do this quite a lot, I'm afraid, privatization versus nationalization of the water sector, I often say, to me, the biggest problem with water privatization is the fact that government, the media, and the public think that all water issues are now water company issues. And so we sit in our silos and trying to solve problems in our silos when rain lands on all of us. And we should be looking at it more holistically. And the great thing about this recommendation 1 is it recognizes the interaction of sorting out all these water issues, but not at the expense of the air environment, which is why it says includes net zero. Right, I'm going to whiz through this because this is a whole talk in itself, but let's go through those 5 pillars, looking at how they need to change to meet those 2 simple principles of capturing locally and reusing rain and returning it to the environment. So new build, there is no way around this. We have to mandate rainwater harvesting. You know, the new government standards taking us from 125 litres to 105 litres, we need a step change below that. The only way to do that is to have an alternative source. We do not need to use drinking water to flush our toilets. We are about to build 1.5 million homes where every toilet will be flushed with high quality drinking water. This is officially bonkers. Okay? You know that, I know that, everyone else gets that. Why the heck are we doing it? Right, so we need to do that. We need to mandate sustainable drainage. Okay? I was chatting to someone in Welsh Government the other day. He was raving about Schedule 3 and saying how wonderful it was. Come on, England. Let's copy Wales. Schedule 3 has been sitting there for 15 years. It might need a bit of tweaking, but the principles are right. We need to give permission for rain to go to watercourses. So when a developer gets rid of his rain and there's a river nearby, he doesn't have powers to put the rain in the watercourse if it's the best place for it. No, he doesn't have powers for that. So, I've got powers connected to the combined sewer though. I know where I'll put it. Water companies, we don't have powers to it either. The Highways Authority does under Section 100 of the Highways Act. So we need to look at that and address that. Section 106, you're probably familiar with, which is the ability or the right to connect surface water to combined sewers. That has to be made far more conditional based on the hierarchy for drainage. Retrofitting, I had to put something in this box, though I don't actually fundamentally believe it, to allow water companies to provide non-potable water. At the moment, water companies can only provide water to a potable standard, drinking standard. And if you're thinking about communal rainwater harvesting systems, then yes, that applies. But that is not in line with the first principle, which is all about keeping the rain local. Because if you've got a communal system, you're going to take the rain away and then bring it all the way back again. And it's heavy. So I only put that in the box to have something in the box. If you don't charge for something, no one values it. So all the highway runoff that goes into combined sewers, no charge. Law says no charge. Section 115 of the Water Industry Act. Well, if you don't charge for it, no one values it, and people don't change the way they do it. That needs addressing. And then Section 114A says, yeah, we can disconnect rain, but we've got to build a public solution. No, locality, bring it local, get rid of the rain in the property curtilage. We need to be able to build private assets for our properties in our country. I've just emailed DEFRA with some proposed word changes to Section 114A. Let's see how they like that. Okay, legislation needs to change. Regulation. We've got to change the way that water companies are regulated that are concerned about environmental outcomes rather than just the siloed approach of just water. The air and land matter too. And what we have at the moment is a system where it's all about outputs. Outputs are a means to outcomes. And if you don't focus on the inputs, you're going to get outcomes with unintended consequences. That's one of my pet hates, by the way, is great ideas with unintended consequences. And we see that all the time in the world of quality of water. I'm talking about quantity of water this evening, but we need to look at the world of quality of water, because mankind invents these wonderful things like PFAS, disc brakes, car tires, and then we start realizing, oh my goodness me, we are chatting on the environment. And then we really need to unwind all that. Okay, so I'm not talking about quality here, I'm talking about quantity. But what really matters, we should have a regulator, probably as they'll combined in the future, maybe, is how we do things. In other words, separating out rain to fixed storm overflows is more important than storing rain to treat it to fixed storm overflows. So we should be interested in that in order to get the outcome, which should be about the environment. And the problem with progressive rainwater separation is it's a higher risk solution. It's more progressive. It's not individual outputs. They're not on the water company's assets. They're on private assets. And we get penalized if we don't hit the output targets. So we really do need to have an approach that enables the right sort of solutions. If water companies go and build a private soakaway in a private garden that belongs to the private individual, we can't call that capital. We have to count for that as operational cost. That's the accounting rules. It's daft. We're building an asset. So if we built a concrete storage tank, that would build our capital value. We'd make a long-term return. Great. But to build the right solution, it affects our OPEX. We're kind of encouraged not to do that as a business. So accounting rules, they need to change. We need to incentivize the right solutions, and we need to recognize the risk. So economic incentives. This is my house. This is my front driveway last June. I disconnected my downpipe, stuck them in a soakaway. I have to practice what I preach, of course. This storage tank, this is my son put this in. It's a 1 cubic meter storage tank, and it goes all around the garden. It's great. It's great. The payback for me, for this expenditure that I incurred from Wessex Water, my wonderful water company, is 123 years. Why aren't you all doing it? Can't you see the ROI on this? No, it's daft. But if Wessex Water came up to me and said, hey, here's £3,000 for you to do it, I'm quids in after year 2. So we need to, but the water company's not going to do that because of the uncertainty of its ability to do that, its uncertainty of what it will achieve, and its petrifiedness of the consequence of failing regulatory outputs. So we need, as I said in an earlier slide, to try and get a system whereby we as citizens can, like we can for solar, can apply for better rainwater management in the home. And boy, this is a great job opportunity, a great business opportunity, green infrastructure jobs. There's a huge amount of money out there. We've just got to steer it in the right place. Education, I talked about storm overflows. People think it's a water company poo problem. It's not. It's a societal rainwater managed problem. And education, I'm spending a lot of time educating politicians because they're the people that can change things, and they don't really get it. That storm overflows is not a poo problem, it is a rainwater problem. And then the final column that we need to address is technical guidance. And I'm so happy that DEFRA have released a new national standards for SUDS where they have recognised that there's two sides to rain. It's not just a waste. It's not just about getting rid of it. It's about collecting it for non-potable reuse. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is you turn the next page and it says developers shall consider. I can consider something very easily. It needs more power, more oomph, more direction. And then we go on to the sort of standard getting rid of it. But it's good that numbers 1 and 2 meet those two principles. And I did say to DEFRA, when they produced the national standard for SUDS, that's not a national SUDS standard. That's a rainwater management standard. But it's good they're going in the right direction. We just need to support that with legislation and regulation. And then we need better technical guidance. And I am so excited about the Rainwater Management Platform. I'm lead sponsor. And this is the fundamental base of technical advice, information, guidance, and steer for how we need to go forward. So to take the CIRIA SUDS manual that Adrien's going to be waving about in a minute and transform it into something that recognises far more the value of rain and gives up-to-date, relevant, one-stop shop, free-to-use information to manage rain better where it lands. So, as lead sponsor of the Rainwater Management Platform, I'm delighted to hand over to Adrien, who's going to tell us more about it.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. What an amazing presentation once again. It's the second time that I present after Matt, and I'm like, why am I doing this? There's no way I can top it off. No way at all. Anyway, I'm going to do my best. First of all, here we go. Okay, as Matt mentioned, we need to change the way we convey good practice guidance, and we need to change our framework when it comes to rainwater. And so that's why we wanted to try to change the SUDS manual that we have, that we know, into something different. We want to respond to some of those challenges here on screen. Building in the good rainwater management principles within the SUDS manual. So maybe it's stepping away from the word drainage and embracing the rainwater as it is. And because drainage just conveys this idea of, okay, we're going to take something and conveying it away from us, away from sites, piping it up far away. Whereas rainwater, it's here, it's there. We all know it, we feel it, so it's not hidden, it's not a secret. There's also the upskilling challenge. Definitely, if we were to adopt SUDS right away from tomorrow, mandatory rainwater management practices, we're going to have a shortage in skills. And we hope that with a different way of conveying good practice guidance, we can try to bridge that gap. Okay, that's the vision, which is to take this 1,000-page document, which I happen to have. Here it is. Should I ask Will to come on stage and do a little bit of lifting? No? Okay. So obviously, it's a hard document to date because a lot of people contributed to it, and in order to date it, it takes 10 years, a lot of funding, and a lot of effort. And then when it's out, then, you're going to have to wait another 10 years to do the very same process again. So we want to step away from conventional, if I may say, guidance documents, which are static. And we want to try something new, which is a dynamic document. And we want to leverage the technology from the 21st century. So, it's very important that whatever we produce for this document is going to be rainwater-centric and that it's going to be accessible and free for anyone. So we want to make sure that there is no barrier in terms of getting into the topic and accessing the guidance documents. Also, this big document here, depending on where you are in your journey within rainwater management or SUDS, maybe a third of it will talk to you, but 2/3 of it probably won't, because either you already know it or this is beyond what you're searching for. If you're not a drainage engineer, there's a good third of it that probably won't be of use to you. And approaching a document of that size for the first time, it's really hard to actually get to where you want to be and to find the information that matches what you're searching for. So through this platform, we want to have it user-tailored. So we want to recognize that rainwater is a topic that touches many different disciplines, and that the people that are searching information for it have very different professional backgrounds and expertise. And so this platform will guide the user depending on on what they're searching for, pretty much. As I mentioned, online will help us change the way we convey this type of information. And we can leverage other formats and medium. So it's not just reading on a piece of paper or reading words, but it's also videos, animations, recordings, all that. And of course, pictures. It will be accessible from any device, which means that if you're in the field looking at a feature that you have installed 5 years ago and wondering about the maintenance, what should be done, then you can access it from your mobile phone or your iPad, wherever it is, and you will find information that you're searching for quite quickly, and hopefully that will be useful instead of trying to scroll on a PDF, which is not ideal. The other thing is the agile, the fact that we want to stop this cycle of waiting 10 years to be able to release a new version. So many things happen in 10 years. There's a lot of learnings, a lot of changes in regulations, and this agile approach will allow us to add on as we go along, as we learn from new technology, from the changes in the context we are working in. And of course, single source of up-to-date good practice. We want to keep what the SUDS manual is known for and build on top of this and maintain this, the fact that it's being recognized as the #1 source of information within the industry for everything sustainable drainage. The 3 next slides are a little bit of a graphics that we've produced during the bid phase. It's just a way to try to convey what we want to achieve. So, taking the guide that I just showed you and adding in the new learnings and transforming it into this platform. I failed to mention that we were successful in getting a grant, a Ofwat Innovation Fund grant, which is absolutely fantastic because this allows us to embrace and play with this new technology with resources that we didn't have before. Wessex Water is our lead on that throughout the Ofwat funds. And then on screen you can see that we've had the support from UCWIR, so the Water Industry Research, which represents all the water companies from the UK and Ireland. So that gives us the confidence that what we are going to produce is going to be adopted by at least the water sector, almost as a whole, which is great. And then you can see also on screen Stantec and HR Wallingford, which we have a very close relationship. We work on many different projects with them. And the three of us with Wessex Water, we came together and we created this idea of the rainwater management platform. And we hope that that through this new platform, we will be able to change the way rainwater is being managed. And you can see there the expected outcomes from these efforts. We're not doing this in isolation. The 4 organizations that you saw on the previous screen are the core member, but we are gathering the knowledge and expertise of a wide range of the industry to produce this. On the left-hand side, you have all the water companies from UK and Ireland. On the middle side, you have the key stakeholders which have given their support, and they will be part of the oversight of this project as we produce it. So you can see the EA, DEFRA, Natural England, ADA, ASA, etc., etc. And on the right-hand side, this is the pool of experts that we have worked with throughout the years, and that are the key experts in the domain of rainwater management, and they will work together to produce the content that will feed this rainwater management platform. As I mentioned, many things have changed in the past 10 years, and we want to make sure that we weave all those changes within this new platform. New context, policies and drivers, with, of course, the national set standards for England. But there's also a lot of lessons learned from big and small projects. I'm thinking about retrofitting, for example, with the likes of Mansfield, massive projects, and a lot to learn from it, but also smaller retrofit, local authority-led projects as well, which are really key to understand. And we want to add those learnings into the body of knowledge of the rainwater management platform. The science and research has evolved as well. There's a lot of good work being done in terms of understanding the drainage capacities of different types of soils, different types of plants, but also more and more around water quality. Technologies. A few years back, we had a full session at Flodex on smart suds and how those intelligent systems can actually make room for water before a rain event, for example. So how those could be helpful, and maybe some of this technology could find its way into the rainwater management platform. Also, case studies. There's a lot that has been produced throughout the years. So we want to make sure that they are linked or added to this platform, as long as new content. A few of the contents that we have identified earlier on in the process, you can see some usual suspects. But for example, like carbon that Matt mentioned earlier on, but also community maintenance, biodiversity net gain, of course, which was not there 10 years ago, and its relationship with sets. Hydraulics, inlets and outlets, there's a lot of research and learnings that came out of that, etc., etc. So we want to really build this body of knowledge with the most recent and the most successful findings. A little bit on the platform itself. So it is going to be a bit of a change. We are going to explore how AI can help us in not creating, but conveying the body of knowledge that exists within the SERDS manual and everything rainwater, and how this new technology can help answer questions of an audience that can be, from the the homeowner that wants to install a rainwater harvesting tank, like Matt did, to the drainage engineer, and everything in between. So with AI, we can create a series of agents that will have different, let's say, background and specialties, and they can help answer some of those questions depending on who is asking and what are their profiles. Then, number 2, enable the change. So this is about about bringing creativity and trying to visualize what those infrastructure could look like. So one idea would be, for example, if I want to see how it would look like in my garden to have a rainwater harvesting tank, maybe this tool can actually provide me with a photo of how it would look like in a garden and see, and that could be the same for a rain garden or for other types of suds in a road or things like this. And that could help with creativity, but also decision-making, and to just, better understand what is the art of the possible in terms of rainwater management. And number 3, realize the impact. So this is what we're trying to achieve, is to have high-quality rainwater management practices. So high-quality sets, high-quality, trying to produce and roll out something that is not a bomb crater, something that is not water being piped to just a deep pound that has to be fenced off afterward. This is really to promote the different options and opportunities that rainwater management can bring. So accessibility is key. Trying to really talk to the user, building on different personas. So as I mentioned, the homeowner, the set designer, the asset manager, etc., all with different expertise and expectations from what they're trying to achieve. The fact that we are leveraging technology like AI, you can actually build your relationship with the platform with iterative questions and back and forth, and trying to nail down exactly what you need out of the platform with questions and answers, pretty much. But all that will always be linked and referenced back to the body of knowledge, which is the core learning from the SUDS manual and to become the rainwater management platform. On top of the platform, we also want to add more tools. Those are not quite defined yet, but the ideas that we had were, okay, what about producing O&M regimes, like an O&M checklist for the cells I just put it in, or for a rainwater management assets that just went in the ground. And this O&M could be for 5 years, 15 years, whatever it is, but the platform could, using good practice, have this checklist, and then you print it, you share it with whoever is working on site. It could also be the surveys specifications ahead of installing anything, or it could be plant pallets, etc., etc. So this is all to try to produce better quality rainwater management assets and sets. And it has the capacity to grow. So this is like a first step. And we aim to have a first version of the platform in summer of 2026. This first version won't be completely finished, but we are going to use susdrain as a sounding board. So basically, whatever we're going to produce, we're going to send it to susdrain. We're going to ask them to get in and break it pretty much. And then from there, we can, with an iterative way, fix it and build it so it's actually, it has some sort of, it is being tested on as we go along. And we want it to be in a fast-paced fashion because the deadline for the final version is summer of 2027. So it's going to go pretty quick. Something here, this slide here, there are a series of quotes. We did a workshop at the last Flooding Coast conference. And the workshop was about, okay, if we were to put out new guidance, what would you like to see out of this guidance? And more importantly, what shape and form should this guidance take? And I just want to highlight this, that what the audience, there were like 45 people from a wide range of background. And like the key thing was easy to use, searchable, and targeted to the user. So it's not one big document that you have to comb through to try to find information that you seek. It's really targeted and tailored to your needs. Okay, this is my last slide, but it's a busy one. And it's a little bit of a, well, you'll see. I hope you will follow with me on this one. What I want to try to do is to link the different contexts and the rainwater management platform with what we produced here at CIRIA and what we intend to produce in the future. So, those kind of, this is like a pond and there's consequences, ripple, whatever it is, going in that direction. And so, for example, on top we have CIRIA Best. This is like the early stages of any project. This is a benefit estimation tool. And that gives you a monetary value for any blue and green infrastructure that you want to install. And it allows you to compare blue and green infrastructure with work as usual. We've talked about the new national standards for SUDs. One of their standards, one of their principles is that SUDs should be considered at the earliest stage possible, even from land acquisition and master planning. Last Tuesday, we've released Enabling Development, Getting SUDs Right from the Start. It's a document that talks to land agents and to local planning authorities on how it is critical to actually embed the principles of good rainwater management and SUDs within any piece of land that is to be developed. This is a free document that is accessible on our website, and it also has an animation, which is 1 minute and a half, and it's like, what do you need to keep in mind when you look at a site and you have 15 minutes to look at a site before making a decision. Am I going to build 15 houses there? 50? Is it going to be 250 houses? I might just ignore it and move on to the next site. Then this document gives you like a little bit of a checklist of what to be on the lookout for. Retrofitting, we've mentioned it. Matt had it in his slides. This is key, but it's also quite complex because there's so many different professions that are being involved with this. Last year, we've released a guide with the Greater London Authority on SUDs for highways. So whenever you open the fabric of the city, it's going to be near a road, and you're going to find utilities, you're going to find all kind of things. So this document is about who to bring aboard, who to talk to have this project actually to be a success and to overcome the difficulties that SUDS retrofit can provide. Blue Roof, we're just talking about it with GeoShield. So this one is really focused on one type of water attenuation feature, but it's a key one. That was released last year as well. I invite you to take a look at it if you want to, if you're not aware of it yet. We've released also something that we call Taking Action, which is about community maintenance. And this is about how, if local communities want to be involved with maintaining flood risk management assets, if they want to do so, then we've provided them with a free guide that goes over what can be done and what should not be done with safety in mind. So that's actually a series of 3 documents. One is for risk management authorities, one is for policymakers, and one is for actually local community groups. These are all for free, accessible in our website. Take a look if you want. Okay, now this very graphic animation thingy is to kind of represent what is to come. And in the middle, we still have the rainwater management platform, because for us, it is kind of the center of what we do. And some of the things that we've released in the past years are echoing a little bit of the rainwater management platform. And some of the learnings from those documents will find their way into the rainwater management platform. All right. Asset management for blue-green infrastructure. This is a document we're working on. We are in the final stages, and this will be released in Q1 of 2026. And this is about considering blue and green infrastructure as actually proper assets. And if we do so, if we can put them in asset registers, then they can be catered for in terms of maintenance in the long term. And it's not a question mark of, okay, do I actually need to put some money aside for this BGI? So this is a really key document, and we're looking forward to releasing it in a few months. The national SED strategy templates. Now that we have new standards, local planning authorities usually have pro formas that they provide for developers to help them going through the planning processes. And this has all the different documents that the developers should provide, and also a little bit of the process to go through planning application. Now that we have new standards, we need to weave in those new standards into those pro formas. So this is a document that is being commissioned by the Environment Agency, and we're working on it now, and we'll be releasing it in Q1 of 2026 as well. And we really hope that this is going to be something useful for local planning authorities and for developers as well, to make sure that whatever is being designed has those rainwater management principles in them. Property level sets, it's a continuation of what Matt was discussing. It is at the heart of the rainwater management platform, but we think that we can also do another document on it to really talk with local planning authorities and developers to try to unlock the situation where we're in now, where the developer doesn't want to put it SEDs into the private property boundaries because otherwise the LPA won't approve it, and vice versa. So we want to try to unlock this situation to allow for this more uptake in new developments and retrofits of rainwater management practices within properties. And then we have a proposal for gullies. Gullies are everywhere. There's so many of them. I'm not sure we know how many of them there are actually. And we have a guidance document on how to maintain them, but it's dated 1989. So it is time to review that document and to think a little bit beyond it as well. Since then, we've learned so much with better rainwater management practices to catch the water where it lands. There is something to be said about the interaction between rainwater practices and gullies, maybe soft surfaces to trap the sediments before it enters the gullies, or maybe if we have enough good quality SEDs, do we still need those gullies? So there's a lot of questions here, and we are fundraising for it. If you're interested in participating, let me know. Now, this is the final bit. We also have a guide on property flood resilience. It's a document that we've released back in right before pandemic. And there is now an upcoming report from Bondfield, which will be released, I think, in the coming weeks. I think probably during... Here you go. And from there's going to be a lot of learnings that had happened since the first iteration of this report was produced 10 years ago. So maybe it's an opportunity for an update on the property flood resilience documents that we have. So this is a question mark, but we really want to follow that and making sure that if there's something to be done, that we are going to produce something for that. We've had very interesting conversations in the past year with Natural England in terms of how suds and biodiversity net gain are interacting one with each other. If you've gone through BNG on your end, you know that suds are listed in the metric, but it is not very high in terms of the value that you get out of those. And so we're trying to entangle that and trying to find a way to understand better how that works and maybe how we can better link the value of suds and BNG and how they can work together hand in hand. Another one is treatment wetlands. So we have a draft proposal for this one, but it's something of interest as well. How do we use those wetlands to treat water from, well, it could be from anything, but highways? How do we need to evolve our knowledge and practice around treatment wetlands for the pollutants that we know now are more and more present in highway runoff? Mm. And then retrofit, I think I mentioned it already. So that's it for me. That was a whistle tour of the RMP and also a lot of things that we have been doing in the past year and that we plan on doing in the next coming years. Thank you so much.
Fiona Thompson, coming from TfL. My query, though, is probably more coming from my own background, and it's a query to Matt. In terms of high-level conversations that you have with government, is at any point the fate of those of us who live in blocks of flats discussed? Because we don't have gardens and things to put rainfall tanks in, and there isn't a clear-cut responsibility of an individual. So I was just wondering, really, whether that sort of model was also being looked at by anybody as to how solutions, both practical in the physical terms and also in the sort of cultural terms for those. Well,
that's a good question. I mean, the principles apply. Even blocks of flats have got roofs and generally have got space around the outside. But clearly, solutions will be more communal systems rather than property level, just because most of the flats don't have any of their own personal roof. So I don't think I don't think there's an issue with fulfilling those principles. We've just so my angle is that when we review legislation, when the government white paper comes out saying we're going to do this, these principles, whether it's a detached property or a multi-story block of flats, need to be the overarching, the kind of umbrella under which legislation and regulation fits. Clearly, in some spaces, there are less opportunities than others, and that's just recognised. But rain does land on those blocks of flats, and those blocks of flats are consuming drinking water for flushing their toilets. So yes, so the same principles apply, but you just need more of a kind of communal approach to that. And we all know the issues with management companies on communal living spaces, and maybe water companies have a part to play there on non-potable reuse if they were allowed to be. So that's the kind of thing that needs to be discussed when we look at how legislation needs to adapt and adopt these principles.
Thanks.
Will?
Thanks, Fiona. Will McBain, Arup. What a presentation. Great work, guys. It occurs to me that there are still some fairly major issues around the funding of this, because I think on October the 16th, they're going to announce the new funding rules for sort of surface water and river flooding, and there's going to be a nice shift towards it being easier to promote surface water. I think they think that under the new model, about 18% of the funding will be used on property level protection and SUDS, rather than traditionally it was mainly river and coastal flooding. So that's good from a surface water management point of view. Bit of NFM, but that'll take a few while. It'll take a while. But in, the agency and the lead local authorities budget's under $1 billion a year. And yet the water companies, it was 104 billion for AMP8, 40 billion or so is specifically around CSOs and this sort of thing. But as you say, Matt, 10% might be sort of surface water separation. So we're missing a massive opportunity here, aren't we? And what more could we do to influence that ecosystem, do you think, to wake people up to the magnitude of the
So you're right.
the cock
There's
up?
plenty of money available. It's just being spent in the wrong places, in my opinion. £56 billion for storm overflows, £50 billion for strategic resource options. That number's going to go northwards. And I'm not saying that we don't need to tackle a lot of these problems with centralised solutions, but my concern is, and not enough of it, because this is a big change for our society, is going to be focused on the property. There are great opportunities for green jobs and lower carbon footprint solutions. So what we need is big thinkers to join these dots, these raindrops together, and recognise the unintended consequences of the route we're currently going down in terms of our carbon footprint. And if people are actually passionate about this planet, and by the way, we need the planet doesn't need us, just to remind people about that fact, then hopefully we'll get DEFRA and MHCLG and Department for Transport and Treasury and Number 10 recognising these simple principles and bringing this national water strategy. But they've got to think outside of water companies. It's so easy for everyone to think, national water strategy, right, water companies, we're going to regulate you in a different way. Ta-da! We've ticked all these boxes. Missed the point. Completely missed the point. Water is bigger than water companies. And if we want to solve these problems, that's where we need this overarching strategy that recognises the societal nature of water and that water companies are not society. They are part of society. So education, I think, is the first step, because if people don't get this, and as I say, it's not rocket science, then all legislation, regulation, technical guidance, all these things will kind of won't progress as fast as they need to. So my message, my ask of you is one, let's keep standard, constant, simple narrative. Okay, we need to manage rain better where it lands. These are the two principles that everything needs to follow. That's it. And then lobby your MPs, lobby people who are influential, and get everyone on that same journey of understanding this natural resource, how valuable it is, how our changing climate is going to change our approach to it, and this is how we need to change our approach to harnessing this wonderful natural resource called rain.
Well, I think, Jacqueline, I don't know if you had a half... Yeah, go for it, Jacqueline.
Hiya, Jacqueline from EPG, and great talks, presentations. My question is, so I think you alluded to it, Matt, in your talk about after the 1960s we began to have separate systems, and I think in my head I've kind of made up a story that maybe that's to do with building regulations, because it does state in building regulations Part H that you've got to have a separate system, so everyone absolutely does it because it's a regulation. So what can this community do to sort of influence the building regulations related to water reuse? Because I think that would be a game changer, and it would join the dots and join the cycle. What can we do? What's the rainwater management platform
you change
doing?
one word in document G. Okay. So document G is all about water efficiency. Rainwater harvesting is optional.
But how can we get to that change of word? What can the community do? Or what is already being done that we might not be aware of? Is anyone influencing those channels?
Okay, the people I speak to in DEFRA get it. DEFRA do not write the building regulations, or they're not the overarching government body responsible. My understanding that's MHCLG. So at the moment, what I'm doing is preparing the data to provide the evidence that managing rain better where it lands is better for society and the environment, for both new build and retrofitting, than centralised solutions. So we're just kicking off a study to bring together lots of other studies that have existed in silos, such as Ricardo study in 2020 that demonstrated that rainwater harvesting was cost beneficial at all sizes, and plenty of SUDS studies talking about the benefits of SUDS, and add these two things together such that we've got concrete evidence that this is common sense. And then we've just got to lobby, and we've got to write to our MPs. We've got to explain how stupid what we're about to do is, because they'll get it. MPs aren't stupid, they'll get it, but someone needs to explain it to them. What I find is that whenever I give a message like this, there's people go, yeah, that's obvious, but I hadn't thought about it. So we've got to get people thinking about it. So a simple letter to your MP who won't be aware of the issues and the simple solutions to these issues. But as soon as you do and they become aware, suddenly we have a different conversation. I have this all the time. And I am forever talking to people about raw sewage being dumped. Okay, that's part of my job, is to go and talk to people about this. As soon as we get the opportunity to talk to people and explain that that's actually not the case, the problem is how we manage the rain, suddenly we are on a completely different plane of conversation. It's not adversarial. We are human beings united under this thing called rainfall, climate change, and new development, and we need to fix that. So I think dialogue is crucial. We have too many keyboard warriors out there just chucking in bombshells. We have to meet with them, we have to talk to them, we have to explain to them, and communicate a simple message, because it is a simple message, and then we have to write to and lobby people that can, in authority, who can actually make these really simple changes, like mandating rainwater harvesting for new build. You know, if you say to me, what is the easiest thing to do? It is change things that we have not yet built. We have not yet built 1.5 million homes. If you want low-hanging fruit on this tree, you change the standards for how you build new things. We can deal with retrofitting a little bit later. That's really important. But for goodness sake, let's try and tackle something that is easy to do. And if you've got a green field, there's your canvas. Let's build it right. And not to quote Boris Johnson, or to be quoted as quoting Boris Johnson, but let's build back better, rather than just building back. And so that would be my message, is let's start with the things that are not yet built, whilst others work on how we retrofit the existing assets we've got.
Matt, before the lecture, we had a CIRIA council meeting, and there's 90 CIRIA members. We put up the slides there for the susdrain members. There's power in community here.
Yes.
And it's part of its business plan. CIRIA, from 2026 to 2030, wants to be more active and appropriate within the lobbying space. So there's an opportunity, from rather than just the water companies going it alone, that there is within the CIRIA and susdrain membership for some sort of better collective voice.
Yes.
That actually is representative not just of water companies for their self-interest or however they're perceived, but actually for the whole of the built environment sector.
Totally. And I was chatting to Giles Bristow, who's chief executive of SAS, the other day, and saying, and Giles is actually more, he's really passionate about the environment, and he gets it. I need him to start shouting about this, as well as shouting about sewage, because that's what Surfers Against Sewage do. But he needs to be shouting about how we're solving storm overflows and how crazy it is. Mark Lloyd from the Rivers Trust, he totally gets this. Absolutely gets it. We need other voices. People don't listen to me because I work for a water company. But you're right, we need the power of community, we need independent voices, and we need a simple message.
Go on, Sarah, that's prompted you to put your hand up.
Thank you. Sarah Mason, I'm at Yorkshire Water. So I think in the water industry, we're very set up into our clean water and our wastewater businesses, and they're well established. This feels to me like it's here. We're moving in this direction. We need to accelerate it. And the way I see it going within our business is we are setting ourselves up for a third arm of rainwater management. So my question is really a blue sky. We talked a little bit about public-private. If we separate, surface water flooding is one of our biggest climate risks. Are we best placed to own and look after those assets, or do we separate and perhaps the lead local flood authority takes on those responsibilities?
That's a good question. Raindrops landing on a property rarely flood the property. They flood several properties away. The principles that we should be responsible for what lands on us, i.e. the land that we own, which might be a roof and a garden, it might be 1,000 hectares of fields. We've got to embed those principles, because flooding happens at the bottom of hills. Raindrops are really sociable. We need ASBOs for raindrops. We've got to say, you're not allowed to meet with your friends. So our policies need to be all about when the rain lands, it's that person's responsibility. LLFAs, water companies, EA, we deal with the problems over here, where the raindrops have landed here, on the farmer's field, on our property roofs. So there will always be problems downstream. That will always happen. And as climate changes, that will increase. But we can resolve that, we can tackle that by creating more responsibility where it lands, which is why the property owner, the field owner, the road owner, they are responsible for the rain landing on them. And we need to make sure that policy, legislation, regulation focuses on that so that they don't then pass the rain on to those people downstream. So the whole issue about LLFAs and water companies responsible for surface water are only because we failed upstream. And we will continue to fail upstream for years and years and years. But my focus is to try and change upstream so that the failures downstream become less of a problem.
And the upstream that you mentioned has actually very different type of professions being
landowners, property owners.
So that's why the guidance that can speak to all of those is actually key. So we all understand that we can actually do something about that rain that falls on our piece of land from whatever background we're from.
Yeah.
So.
And sometimes that rain naturally would go off your property, wouldn't it? And that's recognised. But a lot of the time it would naturally go down, but we've artificially sent it off sideways. So I'm not saying that every raindrop has to disappear into the ground within the property curtilage, although I expect a very large percentage of it will do, given the right drainage conditions. But sometimes it does go off, and that is why we have rivers. That's why rivers exist. So we've got to mimic nature, haven't we? We've got to mimic nature. So when we build an impermeable area, how do we mimic nature as close to that artificial human device called a roof as possible? And that will reduce, hopefully, the work for the LLFAs and the water companies and the EA further downstream.
John Sparks, Geoshield Integrity Testing and Verification. For a little bit of background, quite quickly, I come from a place called Hepton Stall, which is in the Hebden Bridge, Todmorden area that Andy knows very well because he was involved with doing some of the flood correction installations in there, going back over the years. So I just wanted to express that a lot of this, for myself, isn't just a paperwork exercise. It's a reality of flooding happening annually. So my question really to Adrien is, as people will dive into the rainwater management platform to specifically find what they're looking for, is there an AI conscience that is also going to point out things that they're not aware that they should be aware of and bring it to their attention before they then follow on giving guidance that people would be following biblically?
That's a really good question. I think, so what we want to do is to contain the body of knowledge to make sure that whatever answers is being given by the AI comes from a place that has been vetted, that has been produced by the expertise of the industry. However, the AI are quite smart these days, and so they will bring in things that the question is not pointing out necessarily. So, for example, if the question is about what type of suds, maybe the person asking the question didn't think of what is the substrate, what type of soil, and that will be brought up as things to consider. So it will bring in things that are outside of the question, as long as it's relevant, and that it helps with better quality sets.
It's fair to say that with the AI, and the whole point of this being an Ofwat innovation fund with the emphasis on innovation, is it's new. So we're going to try to design this platform and the functionality to achieve all of these things, but it's not yet there, and it's only through user testing and iterative development that we're going to be able to refine the body of knowledge, the content of the guide, to be able to box it up and point it at different personas. And that's going to be the art, actually. Updating the guidance is a relatively straightforward thing. If we want to produce another, yay thick suds meal. It's how you then deliver that in a bespoke way to the end user that's the challenging part, and it represents the innovation. Yeah.
Thanks. Yvonne Rees from Eunomia Research and Consulting. It goes back to the previous point, really, about the policy mechanisms that you're going to need to make this change happen. It's between the steps of the knowledge and the impact. And I think you talked about enabling. And I think you need to do more than enable. You need to encourage and you need to enforce, which is why Matt was talking about the incentives and the regulation changes. And I'd say here to you, Andy, because I think CIRIA has got a really important voice in this. Previously, you were talking about how you'd got that legislative change about BNG. If you can make the same things happen for this, fantastic. And maybe also think about who MHCLG listen to, because they'll have the loudest voice. Maybe it's part of your net that should be launching these messages, because it's very much about the messenger as well as the messages. And I'm so sorry that you aren't listened to, Matt, because clearly you've got huge expertise. But I do think that government has slightly blacklisted you, and it's why you turn up in the Cunliffe Review so much, because you can raise the money to make these things happen, and they can hide behind you as the bad guys. They aren't seen to be unpopular by raising taxes or spending government money, all covered by the big bad water companies. That feels bad, but that whole encouraging thing about where the money is going to come from, what's the fair way of paying for it, I think that's something that really needs looking at. But I suppose it's a question to you, really, Dirk. Are you going to tie up all of this fabulous good work that's happening with the platform to sort of encourage and enforce that change to happen?
Well, Andy's already alluded.
Yeah, I mean, we're not a lone voice in this. There's lots of work going on with CIWEM and the freshwater future as well. We've got, the mobilisation of the companies that are on the CIRIA membership list, the susdrain. And, give or take, we're all pretty much on the same page here. It's not rocket science. Do you know what I mean? And so I don't think there's anything untoward about us collaborating together and trying to make representation as a whole, because it carries far more power than Matt ploughing a lone furrow. Not that he's ploughing a lone furrow, but you know what I mean. That we can do. We can certainly do more in this space.
See, I think BNG was a little bit like this, right? It was first an early thought, then it became the principles that we worked on with Saima and Aima and Saim, sorry. And then we created the guidance and then the case studies, and all that took more and more spaces, and it was adopted by planners and by consulting firms more and more, and it all led to legislation later on. But hopefully the effort we're doing with rainwater management can do the same and spark that change.
And I think what we need is, so we've got biodiversity net gain, we need runoff net reduction, such that whenever you go for planning permission, you have to demonstrate that less rain is going off your area than current. And one of our biggest problems is urban creep. It's the gradual impermeabilization of our country. And it happens all below the radar. We don't see it, the local planners don't see it, people just do it because it makes their lives easier. So there's always going to be that problem of de minimis in capturing that urbanization. But where planning is involved, there's an opportunity to have runoff net reduction as well as biodiversity net gain as part of a planning requirement. Why not? It's when you change things, that's the time to change things.
Another question on the floor.
Yeah, thanks. Marieke Newell from McDonald. So we're also working on a of what innovation fund program. So it's called mainstreaming and nature-based solutions. Most of the water companies are also in there, and a lot of the other partners. But it is, my question is about sort of collaboration. We are working together already on sort of more standardization, and there's been a few meetings, but I think we should really progress that further, because I do think our message is also very much, nature-based solutions do start where sort of the rain falls. So it's a very similar, no-brainer, certainly, but still quite difficult to put in practice. So just really keen to work together on that. But I also was wondering, what is part of the program for you in terms of sort of advocacy, or because that is a big part of our program, that we work on the collaboration, policy, regulation, trying to influence, and now we're really trying to make sort of these cognitive recommendations to feed into that and speak with that early. So I was just wondering, is that also part?
So that is outside the scope of the rainwater management platform. That was very much technical guidance. But all those other things, personally, I'm working on that. Other people are also working on that. I'm working, closely with Paul Schaffer and Alistair Chisholm from CIWEM in their kind of policy areas. Big consultants should be saying the same. I suffer from working from a water company. We need more independent voices, as we've just said. But what I'm trying to do is gather people with a common message. And I don't use holistic, systems, catchment, integrated. I think they're wonderful words. No one understands them. I do, you do, lay people don't. So that's why I try to simplify it to 6 simple words. Manage rain better where it lands. And so that our advocacy needs to start with that simple message, because it starts getting complicated, but if we keep it at a high level, manage rain better where it lands, people don't disagree with you. When you go through those 2 simple principles, everyone agrees with that. And that must be our common narrative before we get into all the detail of what that actually means and how we change our approach.
Jeff Clark from the Environment Agency. So I have to say that I felt a huge amount of joy when I saw that it had converted from SUDS to rainwater management. So I think there's so much opportunity there. I don't know if you know, there's a project that happened at Sheffield University where they went to Hull and converted their language when they were talking to people there about SUDS and called it rainwater management. And the enthusiasm and uptake of what they wanted to do just shot through the roof because people were able to engage with it. But I was just wondering about the scope of the audience, because obviously it is a technical guide, but there is potential for people who are from a non-expert background to connect with it. And that's a very difficult balance to take, essentially. But I can see the opportunities. So I don't know if you've been able to reflect on that in terms of expanding your audience, but not losing your core audience along the way.
The homeowner audience, I would say, is probably it's not informed, it's not technical at all. So it's trying to make those points and trying to convey to that audience the benefits of rainwater management. So yes, we are including this audience into the RMP. But I would love to see the study at Hull in terms of the language that has been used, because then we can train the AI agent to use that language when it is for this type of audience, for example.
Yeah, you can feed it into your component.
Yeah. I have an interesting stat about Hull.
Careful, Matt. Yeah.
Between 1990 and 2020, Hull became hotter than Heathrow was between 1960 and 1990. So I often use that stat when I'm talking about the changing climate, but Hull is now hotter than Heathrow was. That is the reality of what we're dealing with in terms of a warming climate and a climate that's getting wetter. And I had an uncle who used to live in Hull. He always used to say, do visit when you're passing through, knowing that no one ever passes through Hull.
Hello, Thompson, Investigative Health. This time my question is probably more for Adrien. I'm a little concerned about my previous concern again. about what to do about those of us who live in flats, because if I understand rightly, the AI is going to funnel people into different personas depending on what they ask. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so will I be funneled? I know it sounds a bit precise, but I just mean there's so many people who do live in flats, and if you consider urban creep, then I think it's quite relevant. What do you do about people who live in flats?
I think that's something that we'll have to study through the body of knowledge and what is doable from a building perspective, and then that could be part of the what is being proposed via the platform.
Yeah.
So it's like, like Matt said, is it a communal rainwater harvesting system? Is it something installed on the rooftop?
Yeah.
Is it talk to your management company, or something like this?
If we're trying to get people to take responsibility, if I was a layperson, I went on and I said, yes, I'm a homeowner, and the AI sort of started showing me lovely pictures of gardens and rooftops and and pointed rooftops and things like that.
Yeah.
It's sort of a society. It's a cultural bias. It becomes a cultural bias, and it turns a lot of people off because everyone's saying, "Oh well, I can't be responsible. I can't do it because my freeholders complete, whatever, or it's my freeholder's responsibility." It's very. I think from a legislative point of view, leaseholders need help. Because, like you've seen, the things like the fire regs and the changes needed to tall buildings, that's caused a lot of problems where all the costs have been passed on completely onto the leaseholders. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to ramble, but it's just it's from based on the portal though. I think the portal's got more of an opportunity to try and draw in people from people who probably do live in flats.
Yeah, I think
with perhaps a bit more targeted response.
I think as much as possible, we're gonna make it context-based. So when you ask a question, the AI will probably ask you back something like, "What are we looking at? Are we looking at a street, an apartment, a house, whatever it is?" And then the response could be based on that.
I think we also have to manage expectations in as far as the number and granularity of the number of personas in play here. We're trying to develop something for a range of different audiences.
I know. It's just I think it's potentially a fairly big audience. It's not just me saying, "Oh, I live in a flat, therefore it's sort of line." I just mean, if you imagine everyone lives in a flat, tuning into the rainwater management. Anyway, I just want to say thank you.
Well, I think this might be the final word. Just on getting the.
Sorry. I just wanted to remind ourselves that CIRIA was appointed by communities and local government to write the practice guide to PPS 25, which became NPPF. And Peter Bide, who's long since retired, was a massive advocate of surface water management and controlling water at source. And the practice guide clearly, and NPPF, requires local authorities to undertake strategic flood risk assessments, which cover not just flooding from rivers and the sea, but also flooding from surface water. And they should develop those SFRs, and we're updating the SFRA for Hull at the moment, actually, which require policies, policy advice from the SFRA, which can get incorporated into the core policies of a local plan, in which case they have statutory status. So there is actually nothing stopping local authorities who take this issue seriously to start incorporating policies into their local plans that require some of this stuff to be done.
I've seen local plans that have been very much on message getting just bashed back because they haven't got the legislative support. So every local authority I speak to is well up for this. They need support from central. They need Section 42 of the Floods and Water Management Act, and they need a change in Building Regs Document G to mandate rainwater harvesting in order to reduce our water consumption to below, down to 80 litres per head per day. To enable, the cost of not doing this is massive. Don't forget, if the water doesn't exist, we can't build more properties, and we've got to reduce demand. It's not just about supply. If the supply is not there, it's not going to be suddenly magically produced, but the supply is there if we decentralize the capturing of that supply, and I think that is key to the message. Is if we want growth to happen, we've got to change our relationship with rain. That's a good way of ending.
Perfect.
Manage rainwater better.
Yeah.
Great. Just need to wrap up.
Useful quote.
Yeah.
Bob Marley said that that some people feel the rain while others just get wet.
That's a philosophical one for after a couple of pints.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to wrap it up there. First of all, I'd like you to join me in thanking our two speakers this evening, Matt and Adrien.